Retailing at less than $400, the Onyx Books Go 10.3 is an incredibly thin, lightweight, tablet-sized monochrome e-reader, which may lack flashy headline-grabbing features, but is otherwise a brilliant and simple device that has one job and does it really well. I'm James Bruce, you're watching WindowsReport.com reviews. Keep watching to find out what I thought of the Onyx Books Go 10.3. On most gadgets, I can overlook the touchy-feely aspect of a product because it doesn't matter. But with an e-reader, it really does matter. You'll be spending potentially many hours a day with this in your hand. One of the biggest concerns I had coming into this review was that it might be flimsy or plasticky to the touch. It is quite thin and lightweight after all, at only 375 grams or 13.2 ounces, but to my surprise, it actually feels really solid. It's well built. The leather touch back really adds an overall premium feel. It's not tacky, but it gives fairly good grip. Better than plastic or metal would anyway, and despite the large 10.3-inch screen, you can comfortably hold it in one hand. At 235 by 183 by 4.6 mil thick, it's barely thicker than the USB-C port on the bottom, and the only other button you'll find is the power on the top right. There are also two speaker grills on the base, but other than that, it's extremely minimal. The metal chassis is rounded and smooth, while the screen has about 1 centimeter of bezels on the top and right edge, and about 2 centimeters on the bottom and left edge. Half of that left edge is a sort of brighter white, with the Books brand on the left, but it's very discreet. It's a classy looking device no matter how you look at it, though I do wonder how long I'll be able to keep that white faux leather backing clean. The Go 10.3 features 2.4 gigahertz 8-core CPU with 4 gigabytes of RAM and 64 gigabytes of internal storage. That should be plenty. It features a monochrome Carta 1200E ink screen running at 2480 by 1860 resolution with capacitive touch, and it is the whitest of e-reader screens I've come across yet, definitely more paper-like than anything I've seen before. At 300 pixels per inch, the Onyx Books Go 10.3 offers outstanding details. The front panel is an etched glass and it lies completely flat with the case. The actual display layer feels flush too. There's no discernible gap or ghosting. Text is crisp with superb contrast. Included in the box is a Books stylus, and the screen is pressure sensitive thanks to the Wacom digitizer, but doesn't support tilt. The stylus itself is a little basic and plasticky feeling, with these odd vertical indentations running down the shaft. It doesn't seem to fit the otherwise premium design, but it's fine for taking notes and quick sketches. It also doesn't have a secondary function button or an eraser, but it can attach magnetically to the chassis. There's also a faux leather folio case, which attaches magnetically as well, with sleep-wake functionality when you close it. The one major feature omission from the Books Go 10.3, however, is any kind of front lighting. There is no light on this at all, so the e-ink screen relies entirely on any ambient light for you to be able to read. Obviously in the daytime that's not a problem, it looks superb, and as the name would suggest, this is for use on the go, so you're almost certainly going to have light whenever you travel or you're staying in a hotel, that kind of thing. But that alone might be a deal breaker for you if you like to read at night at home without disturbing your partner perhaps. The 3700 mAh battery should offer plenty of battery life, especially considering that lack of built-in lighting. So when it comes to adding content to the device, that's the #1 pain point for a lot of e-readers, I think. There's no micro SD card storage expansion on the Go 10.3, so you can't just load things up on that and then slot it in. But this is one area where Books has really nailed it, with their official support site listing no less than 9 different ways to transfer files. I'm not going to mention all of them, but the easiest by far is the Bookstrop transfer app, which runs a mini web server directly on the device and then lets you use a browser from any local network computer to just drag and drop over files, multiple files at once. There's no login required, you just type in the IP address, drag and drop. For ease of use, that's definitely been my preference. You'll also find a Send to Books website, which lets you do the same job remotely, but it does require you to log in. And lastly, of course, you can use the USB-C cable, which might be better for larger files, but in practice I found the Books Drop Transfer app to be blazingly fast. This is how simple getting stuff onto an e-reader should be. So then we come to operating system apps and Google Play. Like all e-readers, you do have to temper your expectations when it comes to user interaction and app choices. If this is your first e-reader, know that touch responsiveness in general, sort of UI interactions can be slow. Just opening up the menu or clicking something. This isn't a fault of the Books Go 10.3 in particular, it's just the nature of the beast when it comes to slow refreshing e-ink screens. Typing can be quite frustrating, for instance. This isn't a drop-in replacement for a tablet, and you shouldn't treat it as one. But if you learn to trust the accuracy of the keyboard, you can overcome that limitation. The same applies to app selections. I found the standard System Reader app to do everything I wanted it to, and I have yet to come across a file type it couldn't read. I tried comic book CBZs, PDFs, Mobi, EPUB, and more. They were all quick to load, and I was able to turn pages without delay. Speed is not the selling point of this device, but for the intended purpose, that is, reading, it is outstanding. When it comes to third-party apps, you do have access to Google Play, and Books include some automatic app optimization methods, depending on the type of app that it is. Web browsing is reasonably responsive, though again, it's going to depend on how ad-heavy the site that you're browsing is, so there's going to be a lot of variation there. Slower-paced games like word games should run fine. I found the A2 refresh felt best for that. And for the sake of testing, I did install YouTube. And while it sounds fine, even with the recommended highest refresh settings, the video is, I'm going to say, mostly unwatchable. It also managed to crash the OS on occasion when I tried to go back to the main screen. So look, obviously you weren't buying an e-reader to watch videos on, just use your smartphone. For core functionality such as note-taking though, I wouldn't bother installing third-party apps because the stylus won't be as well supported, if at all. To be honest, I don't think you're going to need to, unless you're already heavily invested in some sort of cloud syncing system, but my point is that just because you can install third-party apps doesn't mean you should. As for battery life, out of the box, I found the default settings to be quite frustrating because it would fully turn off the device after just 15 minutes. So you pick it up the next day and you'll need to power it on, which takes about 30 seconds. So I quickly swapped that out to 2 days. Then I found I needed to tweak the Wi-Fi settings because it would stay connected, and I lost about 5–10% of battery power overnight. So again, you need to tweak things a fair bit to get them to your preference, but that's possible. Even so, battery life has been amazing. After a week of testing for a few hours a day, I've yet to need to recharge. It's going to be really variable depending on what you're doing, of course. Minimal refreshing, where you're reading only a few hours a day, minimal Wi-Fi usage, I mean, you could easily go up to a month. In terms of other interesting features, those of you who like to step away from a book for a moment but sort of keep reading will appreciate the built-in Google Voice text-to-speech engine. It sounds surprisingly good.
Indeed, it's not a crowd of Agent Smiths from the Matrix throwing blows at us, but one underlying code for monetary expansion which is generating the multiple blows.
Interestingly, there's also a built-in AI ChatGPT-like assistant that's accessible from anywhere. It is free, but you need to make a Books account to save more than a few chats. There's also speech-to-text in the notebook, which was hit and miss for me. Sometimes it would work correctly to format the sentence with a full stop and a capital letter, and sometimes it just didn't. Hello, WindowsReport.com readers. This is a quick test of the speech-to-text functionality that is built in within the Books Notes app. Now, for some reason, it doesn't automatically add end-of-line periods or capital letters where appropriate, so I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong there. There must be a setting. Oh, there we go. Now it does it. Of course, now that I'm actually recording this and not just doing some prior testing, it actually works. So should you buy the Onyx Books Go 10.3? As an e-reader, the Onyx Books Go 10.3 excels where it truly matters. It has a large, paper-white, incredible contrast, ultra-sharp screen, which makes all your text or comic books look beautiful. It's a pleasure to read on, and it's fantastically responsive to page turns. Outside of reading books, it doesn't perform quite as well, I thought. It's fine for the occasional note-taking, sketching, or annotating PDFs with quick load times, but the input lag isn't as good as, say, the Remarkable 2. So purely for digital drawing on the go, not as good. I wouldn't use it to just take notes in class, for instance, but I would use it to annotate for PDFs. But while we're drawing comparisons to what I would say is the biggest competitor, it's well worth mentioning that the Remarkable 2 has a mere 8 gigabytes of built-in storage, and that's not expandable either. For anyone with lots of PDFs that they need access to on the go, that's just not enough. The Onyx Books Go 10.3, meanwhile, is both a little bit cheaper and has 8 times as much storage. Again, non-expandable, but that should be plenty at 64 gigabytes. I mentioned the lack of screen light. In reality, this wasn't as much of an issue for me as I thought it would be, but then neither my wife or I are that sensitive to light when we sleep, so she didn't care that I left the bedside light on, the neon light on the back of the bed. That'll be different for everyone, I think. Those with a partner who's a light sleeper, or sort of can't stand a little blue LED in the corner of the room, they're really not going to get on with this. That's it from me. Hit like if this review helped you to make your mind up about the Onyx Books Go 10.3. Be sure to subscribe to windowsreport.com for more.